As we grow and change, an interesting phenomenon often arises. The people around us begin to show signs of discomfort. This is rarely expressed directly. Instead, it manifests as veiled jokes, advice offered with feigned concern, or an awkward silence when deeper topics are broached. Underlying this is a simple yet profound truth. Your personal growth challenges their accustomed comfort zone, and no one enjoys confronting their own complacency. Perhaps you're experiencing this right now. You started reevaluating your beliefs, altering your behavior, and maybe even questioning what you once took for granted. Suddenly, you might feel isolated, misunderstood, or judged. What often remains unsaid, but what Friedrich Nietzsche deeply understood, is that such a reaction is the price of developing a strong mind. This isn't about some superficial strength, but a power so profound and palpable that it makes others uncomfortable. It might even frighten them, implicitly exposing the vulnerability of those who still live without reflecting on their actions. But what is the root cause of this phenomenon? The answer lies in the fact that a truly powerful intellect poses a serious threat to universal mediocrity. Friedrich Nietzsche underscored this with utmost clarity. When an individual dares to think independently, create personal values, and reject the comfortable illusion of ready-made truths, they inevitably become a source of danger. A danger to the established system, to those around them, and, crucially, to their former, naive self. This is a kind of summons, a challenge addressed to those who are weary of being held hostage by their own insecurity, who feel on the verge of an internal collapse and are ready to build something unbreakable. It speaks of an intellect impervious to manipulation, a mind that inspires fear with its unwavering resolve. So, if you feel ready to embark on this arduous, solitary, but truly transformative path, stay. For Nietzsche's wisdom, poised to be your guide, will not only challenge you but also grant you long-awaited liberation. After this experience, your thinking will never be the same. Nietzsche was not merely a philosopher in the conventional sense. He was more like a surgeon of the human soul, one who possessed the courage to gaze into the abyss of existence and not just endure the sight, but to immerse himself within it. It was in the depths of internal turmoil, which many try to avoid, that the philosopher discovered an inexhaustible source of genuine strength. According to Nietzsche, personal transformation does not occur in a state of calm, stability, or order, but in the crucible of pain, in moments of downfall and chaos. It is no coincidence that he asserted, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. This is not merely a beautiful metaphor, but a profound psychological analysis. It implies that to forge an unyielding mind, one must abandon the naive belief that it will emerge through comfort, superficial motivation, or positive affirmations. No, true strength is forged in moments of confrontation with suffering, when one does not flee from it but embraces it. When one stops praying for an easier life and begins to strive to become stronger. Consider periods of your most intense personal growth. Did they occur during times of prosperity and serenity? Or, rather, when you were broken, lost, disoriented, and forced to rebuild yourself from the ashes through your own efforts? Nietzsche argued that suffering is not an unfortunate flaw in the fabric of existence, but rather its primary engine. He did not idealize pain but viewed it as a tool for self-improvement. And if one can change their attitude towards pain, setbacks, and loneliness, they will begin to forge something truly rare, an indomitable spirit capable of enduring any trial. It is at this moment that others begin to show discomfort, because while most strive to avoid chaos, you gain the ability to navigate within it. While others crave normalcy, you strive to create greatness. However, such a transformation requires a radical reevaluation of established notions of strength. True strength is not found in a constant smile or artificial control over emotions. It manifests in the ability to endure unbearable trials and emerge from them even more tempered and formidable. But Nietzsche understood that chaos alone is insufficient. Without an inner core, a reliable anchor, one can be destroyed by it. Therefore, we will now discuss a pivotal moment in Nietzsche's philosophy, when he proclaims the death of God and places the full weight of existential responsibility upon humanity. For when the heavens are no longer a guide, a new universe must be born within the individual. When Nietzsche uttered his famous phrase, "God is dead," he was not celebrating. He was warning. Warning of the consequences of losing higher values and the necessity of independently defining the meaning of life, a warning that many still have not fully grasped. One should not interpret the thinker's words literally. He did not physically eliminate a divine being. The philosopher put an end to the widespread misconception of an omnipotent and benevolent ruler of the universe. He dispelled the naive belief in predestination, in a pre-established meaning of existence bestowed from above. The demise of God, in Nietzsche's view, signifies the collapse of any attempts to justify human existence through external factors. This tragic end throws one into confusion, for it was once so convenient to place the burden of responsibility for one's fate on some higher power. The heart was warmed by the hope that every event had its reason, that suffering was an integral part of a divine plan, and that ultimately, a higher justice would prevail, redeeming all. Nietzsche mercilessly tears away this illusion. He fearlessly declares humanity's total solitude in the universe. There is no ready-made recipe for happiness. From now on, each individual is the creator of their own life. It is here that the true formation of a strong personality begins. Most people experience existential dread upon realizing they are alone in a chaotic world, devoid of reliable guidance, guarantees, and the ability to shift blame onto someone else. However, those who find the courage to withstand this blow begin to temper their spirit. By proclaiming the death of God, Nietzsche casts humanity into the abyss of absolute freedom. There is no longer a need to follow outdated dogmas. It is time to create one's own values. One should not blindly obey authorities. It is necessary to strive for self-overcoming and continuous development. An era of ruthless independence dawns, and with it comes the awareness of immense responsibility. From now on, each person's fate rests solely in their own hands. One can no longer count on forgiveness for mistakes or miraculous deliverance from adversity. The path to success or inevitable downfall depends entirely on personal effort and decisions made. However, it is precisely in this frightening freedom that an inexhaustible source of inner strength lies. When the realization comes that no one will come to help, a dormant potential awakens deep within the soul. A fire ignites, compelling one to move forward, even when strength seems to wane. This fire prompts one to think independently, to experience one's own feelings, and to act guided by one's own convictions, not by externally imposed dogmas. It is through the abandonment of familiar supports upon which existence relied that Friedrich Nietzsche lays the foundation for a fundamentally new way of being. This refers to the emergence of an individual who does not submit to the laws of the crowd, who does not need approval or permission from others. A being capable of creating their own moral principles, surpassing their own limitations, and living like a creator, shaping their own reality. Such a being instills fear in the weak-spirited, as it forces them to see their own inadequacy and dependence. In the philosophical reflections of the German thinker Friedrich Nietzsche, a concept imbued with special meaning emerged, the Overman, Übermensch. It is to this idea that we will pay close attention, as the pursuit of creating a mind impervious to external influence and pressure is inextricably linked to understanding how to embody this essence, which rises above accepted norms and is guided solely by its own will to power. Nietzsche rejected the notion of gradual and passive human evolution. He was convinced of the necessity of a sharp leap, a radical transformation, a creative destruction. This is why he proposed the idea of the Overman. It is important to emphasize that this is not a comic book character endowed with supernatural abilities. The Overman is a being who has managed to overcome all the chains that restrain ordinary people: guilt, submission, herd morality, the need for approval. The Overman does not seek universal recognition. He does not need permission for his existence. He creates his own internal laws and follows them unswervingly, even if it sets him against the whole world. This is why his mind becomes unbreakable, for it does not depend on the expectations of others. He does not require external approval to confirm his own worth. He is self-sufficient and draws strength from his own will to power, a deep desire to shape the surrounding reality according to his own discretion. This is the key aspect of the Overman concept. This individual does not adapt to the existing world order. On the contrary, he imbues it with his own meaning and significance. The pursuit of comfort is alien to him. He is drawn to great achievements and accomplishments. The question of whether actions are permissible is replaced by the question of their alignment with the scale of his personality. Such a change in worldview entails cardinal changes in all spheres of life. When a person begins to perceive themselves as a creator, not merely an executor of someone else's will, their thinking, actions, and feelings undergo a complete transformation. However, the path to becoming an Overman requires considerable sacrifices. One must shed those character traits that still crave external approval. One will have to confront the painful feeling of alienation and loneliness. The burden of independently creating one's unique identity, without any guarantees, support, or public recognition, will fall upon the shoulders of the aspirant. Most people prove unable to endure such a trial. They retreat, unable to even begin their journey, preferring to return to the safe world of ready-made beliefs, dogmas, and rules established by someone else. The road to the Overman is a road of solitude, and Friedrich Nietzsche understood this perfectly. He himself lived on the fringes of society, misunderstood and often called mad, isolated from the world he sought to liberate. It was in this solitude that he found his true freedom. It is crucial to realize that as one's mind and spirit strengthen, one increasingly distances oneself from the general populace, rising higher and causing greater discomfort to those around them. Becoming an overman is, without a doubt, one of the most severe and radical processes an individual can undergo. It is a path that demands the ruthless destruction of everything that is not one's true self. This involves shedding masks imposed by a destructive culture and society, where conformity is elevated to a virtue, and the expression of individuality is punished. Only after the shattering destruction does creation begin. However, this construction of a new personality does not happen in a noisy crowd, but in the silence of seclusion, in deep solitude. It is this solitude that becomes the watershed, separating the strong-spirited from the weak. It is no coincidence that we will next delve into the most underestimated, yet most powerful aspect of this path, the solitude of the strong. The truth is that to gain unshakable mental strength, one must learn to walk through life alone. And only a few are ready for this trial. Are you? If there is an aspect of developing mental strength that people prefer to keep silent about, it is this. The stronger one becomes, the lonelier one feels. And this is not the result of conscious isolation. Rather, the world simply ceases to understand how to interact with such an individual. Friedrich Nietzsche unequivocally asserted, a free spirit, an individual who rejects accepted moral foundations, does not accept simplified truths, and possesses independent thought, is inevitably destined for alienation from the collective. This isolation is undoubtedly accompanied by emotional pain, but this pain is an indispensable condition for genuine development, which requires freedom and space. It is impossible to achieve personal growth while remaining bound by the expectations of others. Most of humanity, like invisible sheep, inhabits a herd where every thought is controlled, and every action is evaluated through the prism of others' reactions. People become accustomed to moving in a group, thinking uniformly, and feeling a sense of security derived from the presence of others. However, Nietzsche offers a completely different path. He pulls the individual out of their comfort zone and casts them into a desolate desert. In this barren landscape, there are no applauses, no praises, and no guide pointing the way. Here, one is left alone with oneself, with doubts, emotional wounds, fears, and the temptation to surrender. It is at this moment that the real test begins. What will most people do? They will choose flight, again taking refuge behind familiar masks and pretending not to feel, think, or see anything. But if one truly desires to become unbreakable, one must remain in this desert. They must endure the silence that reveals their true essence. Friedrich Nietzsche once remarked that the individual must relentlessly resist dissolving into the collective mass. This path, full of challenges, often leads to a feeling of isolation and even fear, but the acquisition of true selfhood is worth any sacrifice. To truly possess oneself, that is the peak, that rare and powerful achievement available to everyone. When one truly owns oneself, external forces lose control over them. No one can determine their worth, no one can break them. However, self-possession comes with the burden of loneliness. On this path, losses are inevitable, as is misunderstanding from others. An individual who chooses this path may face accusations of arrogance, strangeness, and aloofness. Those around them will strive to force them back into conventional boundaries, labeling them as mad, cold, and unfeeling. But this is the price of freedom from others' expectations, the price of rejecting the need for approval. It is the payment for a life that is not merely a reflection of others' desires. The harsh reality is this: the inability to endure solitude indicates an unreadiness for true freedom. True freedom is born from renunciation, the renunciation of emotional crutches, of comfortable but false illusions, of friendships dictated solely by utility. This is why Friedrich Nietzsche viewed solitude not as a burden, but as a valuable gift, an arena where one's true essence can manifest in its full splendor. However, this independent mind, this elevated spirit, does not merely exist in isolation. It begins to grasp truths inaccessible to the majority. And with this comes a natural consequence: conflict with universal mediocrity. For when an individual begins to gain strength in individuality, collective mediocrity instinctively senses this and offers resistance. And next, we will discuss precisely this threat emanating from collective mediocrity. The world does not persecute those who blend into the general mass. It crushes those who dare to stand out. Nietzsche did not fear despots, authoritarian rulers, or overt oppressors. His true fear, which he denounced with philosophical fervor, was the hidden and destructive power of collective mediocrity. This invisible system hinders progress, punishes unconventional thinking, encourages conformity, and masks cowardice under the guise of virtue. According to Nietzsche, true tyranny does not come from those in power, but from those around us. It comes from the crowd, which demands that everyone remain insignificant, so that it itself does not have to change and grow. It is precisely when an individual begins to manifest their uniqueness that such a dynamic unfolds. When the mind becomes more discerning, the character more seasoned, and the presence more noticeable, it causes discomfort in others. The reason for this lies not in any flaws, but, on the contrary, in the manifestation of extraordinariness. Customary patterns are disrupted, and society, as is well known, is not inclined to welcome those who break these patterns. Collective mediocrity tolerates no manifestations of individual superiority, because this superiority highlights the unpleasantness of a mediocre existence. Friedrich Nietzsche called this phenomenon slave morality, a system of values built by those who, unable to reach the heights, chose the path of re-evaluating common concepts. Strength was declared arrogance, ambition, selfishness, and independence, coldness. On this basis, a moral system was created designed to protect the weak and condemn the strong. However, make no mistake, the driving force here is not compassion, but rather resentment. The weak do not seek salvation, they crave the destruction of those who surpass them. Therefore, when one begins to gain freedom and express their individuality, they inevitably face attacks. These attacks can be overt or veiled, in the form of unfriendly glances, demonstrative silence, or sarcastic remarks. The meaning of the unspoken message is clear: become part of the collective again. Your individuality makes us feel insignificant. And this happens without malice, simply by virtue of your unique nature. Friedrich Nietzsche deeply understood that the vast majority of people languish in the chains of conformity. Their existence is defined by fear, guilt, and blind obedience. Anyone who dares to question this state of affairs is perceived as a threat to the established order. However, make no mistake, grayness and mediocrity attack not with brute force, but with numerical superiority, universal consensus, and monotonous repetition. They will seek to sow the seeds of doubt in you, to convince you that you are wrong simply because you do not fit the general picture. The entire arsenal of social tools, from shame to complete alienation, will be deployed to make you bow your head. And it is at this critical moment that many break, unable to bear the burden of being strange, inconvenient, or arrogant. But Nietzsche would offer you a different definition: necessary. For while the world continues to revolve in a cycle of recycled ideas, artificial desires, and comfortable truths, it is the strong individual who brings the much-needed discomfort that sparks the birth of something fundamentally new. Your distinctiveness is the spark capable of igniting the flame of change. But it also becomes the object of fierce resistance. The confrontation with universal mediocrity, embodied in strength of spirit, independence of thought, and self-sufficiency of existence, is akin to a real war. And, like any military undertaking, it requires thorough preparation. However, in this case, the arsenal consists not of physical weapons, but of mental ones. This is the topic to which the concluding part of the narrative is dedicated. Developing an intellect to an awe-inspiring level comes with considerable costs, but the reward it brings is truly invaluable and inherent. In this section, the reader will understand the price and power of an unyielding spirit. The fact that the reader has reached this stage already sets them apart from the general mass. Most people would have retreated in the face of the first difficulties, given up at the first sensation of discomfort, or stopped reading upon realizing that this is not entertaining content that flatters self-esteem, but a call to action. A call addressed to those ready to part with comfortable illusions and face reality with open eyes. For creating a mind so strong that it inspires awe is not merely a choice, it is true self-sacrifice. On this path, losses are inevitable. One will have to part with superficial friendships, miss opportunities that demand submission, and forever lose the ability to be content with little. However, in compensation, one will gain something truly invaluable: inner harmony, crystalline clarity of mind, and authentic presence in the moment. They will begin to realize that the vast majority of those around them are in a semi-somnolent state of prostration, and that their own clarity can make others feel uncomfortable. Their unwavering confidence makes others tremble. and their concise presence proves more significant than the verbosity of many. This strength does not come from external sources. It is not the result of reading self-help books, nor is it achieved through memorized phrases or meaningless affirmations. It is born deep within the soul, in the silence of sleepless nights, in decisions made in secret from prying eyes. It is the outcome of a relentless internal struggle between the former self and who one strives to become. And this struggle is destined not to end, for true strength lies not in victories won, but in the tireless pursuit of perfection, even when there is an opportunity to stop and be content with what has been achieved. Friedrich Nietzsche did not seek to create an army of followers. His goal was to provoke internal transformations comparable to earthquakes. He urged people to abandon the pursuit of approval, to stop searching for meaning in ready-made formulas and systems, realizing that true understanding can only be achieved through hard work, self-sacrifice, and deep self-knowledge. Nietzsche wanted people to become dangerous, not in the sense of cruelty, but in the sense of a rare strength of spirit, so rare that their very existence forces others to look in the mirror and confront those aspects of their lives they diligently